Hi, guys. Today we're going to discuss narrative writing. So, what is narrative writing? Narrative writing is defined as writing that tells a story or gives an account of something that has happened. The purpose is to recount a story grounded in personal experience or the writer's imagination. Narrative writing is going to be any type of writing that tells a story, whether it is a story that is completely make believe, which is what we call fiction, or a narrative about your life, which could be like a memoir or an autobiography. So, something that's going to tell a story or events that happened in order. So, what is the method for narrative writing? This uses a setting, characters, circumstances, or events, which is what we call a plot, a point of view, and the sense of resolution to tell a story. Description of these elements is a key factor and may employ strategies such as flashback, foreshadowing, dialogue, tension, or suspense. So, the setting is where the story is going to take place. So, in a narrative, you have to make sure that you describe or tell me where the story is happening. Is it happening in the summer, in the fall, in India, in Louisiana? Be specific. Characters is who or what the story is about. You have to have a protagonist, which will be a good guy, and sometimes an antagonist, which is your bad guy. So most stories have more than one character. Characters can be realistic or they can be fantasy, like a talking animal. Circumstances or events. These are going to be the different events or the different actions that occur that are going to be like steps. So, one event is going to lead to the other, and which is going to eventually lead to the boiling point or the problem exploding in the story. Plot is going to be the things or the way the story is written. So you have your exposition, and it always starts off describing the characters, the setting, and the basic problem. Then it moves up to your rising action. This is where all of the different parts of your story come together, all of those different events that lead up to your climax. Your climax is going to be your boiling point or your turning point in your story. Then you have the falling action. These are the events that start to go like down the steps or start to tie up your story in a nice little bow. And your resolution is going to be the end. And the resolution is how your problem is solved and then what happens after. And then you're going to move on to your description. Description is key. This is going to be using those five senses sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste to describe your setting, your characters, your circumstances, your events, everything that's in your story. So make sure that the reader can picture what you're describing in your head. Then you have strategies like flashback, which means remembering something that happened in the past, foreshadowing, giving a brief snippet of something that might happen in the future, dialogue, which is conversation between characters, tension, which is going to be where characters are kind of mad at each other or it ends, and then suspense. That's going to be something where it's keeping you on the edge of your seat and you can't wait to see what happens next. Then narrative writing has a purpose. The purpose of a narrative is to tell a story and remember, capture the reader's interest. Your narrative should be so interesting that it should look like when the person reads it, they should look like this turtle. They should be so excited they can't put the book down. They just want to keep reading and find out more. Narrative purpose. So, writers may have many purposes for telling specific stories. Sometimes they have a meaning that goes deeper than is simply the events. That meaning that goes deeper than the events sometimes can be called symbolism, especially if it's something that is small and has a meaning, like possibly a white dove, which usually symbols peace. Or it could be an overall meaning or a lesson that you're learning, like a moral, such as what you learn in a fable, which is going to teach you a lesson of what to or not to do. Then sometimes the writer has a point to make. So, what point are they making? And then sometimes the writer wants the reader to understand something personal about himself or herself or to present a lesson about living. So, do they want you to understand his or her own life, or do they want you to understand to live life to the fullest? Something along those lines. Next, we have dialogue. Dialogue is the conversation between characters during an incident when a character in a story speaks. So, this is a conversation or going back and forth between two characters. Dialogue is marked by quotation marks around words that are spoken. Included Include a dialogue tag like explanatory words, which identifies who is speaking and how they are speaking. Think about how your character will express himself or herself. Everything should not be, he said, I want to leave. How did he say he wants to leave? If your character wants to express anger, he yelled, I want to leave. If your character wants to express sadness, he sighed, I want to leave. So think about how a character would express happiness. What words could you use to say that a character wanted to leave happily? He exclaimed, possibly. Transitions. Part of maintaining focus in a narrative writing is selecting relevant details that advance the story and leaving out information that may distract the reader from the focus of the story. In other words, you only want to put the most important details in there. You don't want to put something in there that's going to cause the reader to think about something other than your main idea or your main point. Transitions are words or phrases that help show the passage of time and move the story along. Examples: as soon as, then, because, just when, instead, once, he or she, next, afterward, after that, and all at once. So, for example, you could say, as soon as the detective entered the room, or then the robber ran away. Anything along those lines that are going to let you know the order of things that occurred. Next, we have point of view. Narratives have point of view, and narratives are told in first and third person. So, first person point of view is going to be chiefly using I or we, and then third person point of view is going to be used he, she, or it. You also have a second person point of view, but that is usually used when giving instructions and not necessarily in novels. So, point of view. First person is going to be the narrator is a character in the story. Uses words like I, me, and my to refer to himself or herself, and tells his or her own thoughts, opinions, and feelings. The character does not know what other characters are thinking and feeling. So in this case, the character only knows what he or she is thinking or feeling. He can only see the actions of what the other person is doing or know specifically what that person says. They can't get into their mind and understand what that other characters are thinking. Our next point of view is third person. And for third person, the narrator is not a character in the story. The narrator uses words like he, she, and they to refer to characters and can reveal the thoughts, opinions, and feelings of more than one character. There are three types of third person points of view. The first one is going to be all knowing, which means the narrator is going to tell you the thoughts and feelings and opinions of every single character in the story. The second point of view is limited, which means they're going to only give you the points of view of one character, which is usually going to be the main character. And then last one is going to be subjective, which means that they are going to not give you the thoughts or opinions of any character, only tell it like they're seeing, like if they were retelling a movie to you. They're not going to tell you what the characters are thinking, but only what the characters say and their actions. That way, you can make opinions for yourself on what the character is thinking. Next, we have characterization. So there are 4 methods of characterization that authors use to help the reader understand something about characters. The first method is physical appearance. This is going to be how they describe a character. So if they describe a character as unkempt, holes in their jeans, stains on their shirt, unbrushed hair, haven't brushed their teeth, dirt on their face, you might say that they're describing that character as messy. Method 2 are the thoughts, speech, and actions of characters. So this is where they're going to either say something like, maybe a character is rude or disrespectful, and so they say that through their speech if they yell at someone to shut up. Maybe a character is a bully, and we know that through their actions because they are going to push other kids down or take their lunch money. And then we know the thoughts of those characters. And so maybe we know that character is shy because we're able to understand what that character is thinking. Like they hope the teacher doesn't call on them or doesn't pick them to read next. Method 3 is what other characters say about the character. So in this instance, this would be what other characters are describing the character or how they believe the character acts. So an example of this would be if the antagonist or the bad guy is talking about the protagonist, and he talks about how the protagonist is a goody goody and never does anything wrong. Then method 4 is going to be narrator's comments. How does the person narrating the story describe those characters? So this would be if they're describing the character to you and they use words like clean, tidy, or everything's in a row. We know that that character might be a little OCD. If you look at the picture at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we have a careless character, a character who's not paying attention where she's going and reading the paper instead, versus a careful character who is sitting there, she's watching where she's going, she's making sure she doesn't step in the puddle or fall. So this is what we have for narrative writing. I hope this helps you better understand what you need for your writing task.